there is a little action going on with the Columbus Blue Jackets off of the ice and all the way overseas, where there was a meeting in Nice, France, I believe, today between Jarmo Kekalainen and Artemi Panarin, trying to talk about a long-term contract or see where both sides are at this point. Aaron Portzline of The Athletic has been all over it, and Aaron joins us right now. And I saw your report out there that the meeting only lasted, like 45 minutes or so. Is much into that I take that as a bad sign, where you go overseas, and I realize he was in Finland and went there, but you go all that way, and the meeting lasts only 45 minutes. Am I reading tea leaves too much? Should I not read anything into that? What do you think?
Yeah, I think maybe. I mean, Jarmo made it pretty clear. Jarmo Kekalainen, the Blue Jackets GM, made it pretty clear that he did not view this as an attempt to persuade, as an attempt to certainly not beg him, Panarin, to decide that he wants to sign long-term here, that it was more of an attempt to say, this is what is ahead of us, given your decision. You could be traded at any time. I'm guessing at some point in there was a request by the club to have Panarin provide them a list of teams that he thinks he may want to sign with long term, because that would certainly enhance their return on any trade. But I never got the idea that Jarmo was going to walk in and put a contract offer on the table for 8 years, $96 million, and say, take it or leave it, kid.
Right.
That this was more, all right, this is where things stand, and this is how we're going to proceed before you get to training camp and things get really sort of hectic with a million questions a day and teammates wondering what you're thinking or what you're not thinking. I think it was just an attempt by the general manager to make sure that they were on the same page with how they would proceed.
It does not seem like, and again, I'm not in these meetings, and just from what I read and what I understand, Aaron, it does not seem like this is acrimonious in any way. They're just trying to figure out where each side is. Is that, am I reading that right?
Yeah, I've got no sense from either side that there is, that to use your word, is that it's acrimonious. I know the Blue Jackets are disappointed by this, obviously, but there's also a keen understanding that this is his choice. This is what unrestricted free agency means. This is not a player. He's not saying trade me now.
Mm-hmm.
That would be awkward. This is not what Jeff Carter did. This isn't even what Rick Nash did a number of years ago when he said, I'd like to be traded for various reasons.
Or Kyrie Irving in the NBA last year.
Totally. This is a player saying, look, and in a way, you don't want to come down too hard on the guy. I get it. It's disappointing. In a way, he's doing the team a bit of a favor. They would have found out one way or another this summer by his willingness to negotiate if he wants to sign here long-term or not. But he came forward and said, listen, I may not want to sign here. It's going to be 7 years, 8 years. I may want that to be else. And that's, again, it's almost like he's a free agent a year early. But this is his right as an unrestricted free agent to not sign with the team that he's currently a member of. As painful as that is, this is how he's handling it.
All right, let's get this out of the way, because I've been looking at you on Twitter today, getting in back and forth.
Don't do that.
Getting in back and forth with people about what about a bridge contract? What about a 2 or 3 year contract, which has been floated out there? That's not really a realistic option, is it?
No, I mean, you think of a bridge contract being a bridge that gets a player from his RFA, his restricted free agency years, to just short of his UFA, a contract that extends into his UFA years. He is an unrestricted free agent. He's 26 years. Current contract expires. He'll be 27 years old. The max contract he can sign with the Blue Jackets is an 8-year extension. So that brings him to 35 years old, right? He's not interested in a 2-year deal.
Mm-hmm.
I've got no sense that he's interested in a 1 or a 2-year deal. And his agent used that as a hypothetical, and I think a lot of people read it the wrong way, just saying, look, if this were a 1 or 2-year deal and he were considering signing with the Blue Jackets, no big deal. But it's not that. It's an 8-year deal. It's most likely the rest of his significant portion of that, and so that where he commits to for the next better part of the decade is really important, and it's a more difficult decision than it would be if it were just a 2-year deal.
Visiting with Aaron Portzline of The Athletic, talking about today's meeting, 45 minutes or so between Jarmo Kekalainen and Artemi Panarin, his representatives. DJ on Twitter asking this question, and Aaron, I believe I've seen you answer this before, that the relationship between John Tortorella and Panarin doesn't have anything to do with this, but he's asking, is Torts' volatility a problem for Panarin? That is not the case, correct?
That is not the case. I mean, there are some players you wonder about. There are a lot of players who have expressed how much they like playing for Tortorella. Artemi Panarin and John Tortorella got along famously. I mean, really well. And his agent has gone out of his way to make it clear it is not the team, it's not the teammates, it's not how he's been treated, and it is certainly not the coach. That has absolutely nothing to do.
Yeah. His relationship with his teammates, too. I've been, is there anything like a Nick Foligno or those guys can say to Panarin to try? Do they do any quote unquote recruiting, so to speak, to convince him that, hey, maybe this is the place you want to be long term, or do players kind of stay out of this stuff?
Yeah, well, it's funny. I asked that question of Foligno. I asked it of Atkinson and of Boone Jenner in the last probably 10 days or so. This is not something that players can really afford to do, because they all know that at some point they may be in this situation. Again, they did not step in with Josh Anderson during training camp last year when he held out, other than to support him. They did not step in when Ryan Johansson had a flare-up with the Blue Jackets. I think it was in 2014. This is the players, they all want Panarin to stay. If he comes to camp, there may be guys that try to convince him otherwise, but there's no way that they're going to, as they see it, this is every bit his right as negotiated into the collective bargaining agreement. He is an unrestricted free agent. That means he gets to choose where he plays. And, if he doesn't love Columbus by now, maybe it just isn't right for him. Maybe he just doesn't like it here. And I don't think the players feel right trying to persuade him otherwise.
So the Bjorkstrand thing, Oliver Bjorkstrand thing got done.
Yep.
And we've seen moves like that. What are the priorities other than obviously figuring out the Panarin thing, which is, in red letters, the number one thing that they're dealing with. But other priorities right now, Aaron, for the offseason for the Jackets and Jarmo Kekalainen?
Yeah, well, if Panarin is number one, Bobrovsky has to be 1A, because he's in the same situation contractually as Panarin is. He's an unrestricted free agent after this coming season. And I'm not sure that Bob's situation is much different from Panarin's. We just don't have information on it because his side isn't talking at all. Now, Jarmo Kekalainen has said that there has been dialogue between the team and Bobrovsky, so that alone makes it different. And when I say dialogue, I mean negotiations, contractual negotiations. That makes it different. But there's no sense that a deal with Bob is imminent. They may both be thinking of flying the coop after next season. It seems that way for Panarin. We don't know if it's that way with Bobrovsky, but you're talking about probably the most talented forward the franchise has ever had, and certainly the best goaltender the Blue Jackets have ever had by a long shot. And both of them are in a similar situation contractually, and we'll see where it goes on both fronts.
Holy smokes, what an off-season it would be between now and training camp if you're shopping two guys like that around.
Exactly.
But with Bob, there always is the playoff question that comes up, Aaron, and there was the one game that they won, what was it, game 2, where he faced 50 whatever shots. I thought it was great, even though he gave up 4 goals, but there are some other soft goals. Is that still a thing with the Blue Jackets organization? Like, is there still the question mark, can he deliver in the postseason, hanging over him?
I think that question is there. I don't think the question is there to the extent that they would desire not to re-sign him. It may impact how much they want to give him per year. Do they think he's an eight-figure goaltender, $10 million plus per year if he hasn't won in the playoffs. Maybe that's part of it. But I don't get any sense that they've decided they don't want him around beyond next year because of his playoff performance. I think this is absolutely a player that they want to sign. But I would not. The Panarin thing, I think, comes to a head quicker than the Bobrovsky situation. But both of these are really big decisions and have really, at this point, troubling or curious outlook somewhere in between the two.
One last Twitter question from Matt says, is there any chance that Mark Letestu is back with the Jackets next year?
I see very little chance of that. I think Letestu sort of missed the first wave of free agency and he just checked in with Dick Blair a few days ago. Maybe something's coming in within a couple weeks for sure. But I don't see any sign that it's Columbus. And really the Riley Nash free agent signing now gives them 5 centermen down the center. I don't think Letestu is in their plans.
All right, Aaron. We really appreciate the time. It's going to be fascinating to follow this over the next few weeks. I'm sure you're going to be busy. Appreciate you taking a few minutes.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks, Matt.